Okay, good evening guys. Welcome back to the Malaysian Architecture Education Online Lecture Series, proudly presented by MASA. Hope you guys are doing well and thank you for joining us tonight. So for those who are new, MASA stands for Malaysia Architecture Students Alliance and is a non-profit student committee acting directly under PAM, which is the Pertubuhan Architect Malaysia, consisting of student representatives from all architecture institutes in Malaysia. During this time of MCO, MASA and PAM have decided to launch this online lecture series for students to be more productive and gain more insights. Architect Adrianta is the head of PAM Education and Dr. 𝐔𝐬𝐬 is the convener. My name is 𝐆𝐚𝐫𝐲, a MASA representative from UPM, and I'll be your MC for today. I would like to welcome our guest speaker for tonight, Mr. Gary Yao. He is the co-founder of PROJECTXYZ, an initiative that motivates both experimental and contextual architectural projects with different approaches from furniture to competitions and installations. Along with his partners Amos, Yixin, and Vicky, the team endeavors for collaborative and collective projects that are rooted in user experience and architecture. Apart from designing, Gary hosts XYZ podcasts on Spotify while exploring ways of journalism in architecture such as writing and curations. Currently, he is a postgraduate architectural student in University of Strathclyde, Glasgow. So sit back and relax. We will have Q&A session at the end of the talk. But if you have any questions during the sharing, feel free to type them down in the chat box so we can attend to them at the end of the sharing. Also, Mr. Gary would really appreciate if you can turn on your cam, as he would like to have a more engaging session with you all. So without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Gary. Hi, Mr. Gary.
Hi, yeah.
I'll pass the stage to you.
Thank you so much, 𝐆𝐚𝐬. So I'll share my screen. Okay, I'll start now. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here. And I know that, in previous MASA sharing session, it's been, a lot of prestigious architects or even professional or even students, they are, honored to share. So do I. And for me, I think this is actually the similar topic that I delivered on UCSI graduate exhibition a few weeks ago. So that's why I come up with the idea that 2.0, is about unknown variables in architecture. And I would like to say, because I think in the Facebook it just says that XYZ is a company. Well, it's not. I mean, if you would like to say XYZ is a company, I think it's okay. but I think the whole idea is that XYZ is a initiative. We started off as a group of people that we thought that we can collaborate with different kind of people so that we can exchange idea. So now again we are focusing on competition, and now I think we are putting more effort on the podcast. I think that's where the fun parts comes in. And again, I think thanks to the MC, I also think that why not we can turn on the camera, because I mean I'm now in Glasgow and I thought that you're not able to see you guys and have more fun engagement instead of a typical sharing session. So this sharing session is actually an unknown because I can't really define what is actually architecture is or even a whole sharing session about. So I was heavily inspired by this book by B.B. Doshi, Paths and Chartered. So this book, he published it way earlier before he received Pritzker Award, I think. So that's a very interesting book that actually narrates his whole life and his career, and talking about he was working with Corbusier, and then after that collaborated with Louis Kahn in various scale of project. I think mostly he practiced in Ahmedabad in India. So that makes me realize that architecture is not limited to design a building, but it is about celebration of life. So instead of advocating how well known or knowledgeable we can be, it's not about me, it's not about myself. It's about the whole of us. So why don't, you know, this whole sharing session can cultivate how innocent or unknown like a child we can be. So XYZ, you know, back in additional mathematics, if you guys know, you know, we tend to find like what is X, Y is Y, right? So I provide this kind of mentality where XYZ is an unknown. When things are unknowns, you tend to think a lot. You tend to have a lot of possibilities, you know. Recently, I was looking into this book called Lean Startup. It's actually a business book, you know, but it says about audacity of zero. When you are zero, you have no limitation. You can have 0 to 0.1 or 0 to 0.2, you know, you can start anywhere. But when you start, the moment you start 0.1, then you tend to think how to move to 0.2, how to move to 0.3. So I always believe that if you are staying at that stage of curiosity, that stage of innocence, you can actually do a lot of things. So by knowing different kind of people, different kind of experience, you have limitless of potential. So today I'm going to talk about Project XYZ, which is mostly the works that I've been doing outside my assignment. And I'm going to talk about Strathclyde, where I'm now doing my master's. And I'm just going to talk about 2 projects instead of 4. And in the end, we can have discussion about it. And of course, this whole sharing session is not really a professional sharing session. It's going to be like an informal yet, I hope, fruitful discussion with all of you. And again, XYZ is not really a company, so we don't have this kind of employer-employee kind of relationship. We are all the same level, and we collaborate with different kind of people. We appreciate different kind of talents to work with us. So there will be different kind of projects that I won't claim it as whole XYZ thing. You know, we actually collaborate with different kind of people. So technically, you can say XYZ is much more like me and Amos or 𝐔𝐽𝐶 or Vicky. You know, different kind of individuals working on together, and when we collaborate with different kind of people, that's where the magic or the friction comes in. And so here we have Amos, 𝐔𝐽𝐶, me, and Vicky at the top left corner. That's where our core team is. But the beauty is that we don't have a specific team saying that, oh, this project must be working within our scope. It can be, you know, not limited to just 4 of us. We can go beyond that. So we are fortunate enough to know a lot of different kind of people. But starting off with that, we have, you know, we know some of our friends from our batch in Taylor's. So we throughout that process, we know different kind of people. We work with different kind of students or colleagues. And of course, throughout the whole study session, we can't just saying that, you know, who is the number one, who has the higher CGPA, right? So apart from that, I quite enjoy the idea of doing things apart from assignment. That we did some competition, we did some open proposal, we did some open calls for different kind of invitation. So in here we have like Soon, for example, or Nicholas, or Nikki, Harish, Yemin, you know, all different kind of people actually working with us throughout a lot of different kind of projects. And I really appreciate their time as well. Like, or Yushen, Suzanne, they actually go along with us, you know, throughout the whole process. So apart from that, I think not just limiting ourselves or constrain ourselves into architectural projects. I think XYZ podcast is a new thing, you know, born out of this throughout this pandemic. You know, as a result that we think that throughout podcast, like an interview session, we can know different kind of people and how about their journey, and also different stories from different kind of people. So the whole podcast is actually available on Spotify. You can actually check it out. It's free. I was really inspired by Hans Obris. He's actually a co-director at Serpentine Gallery. So his way of curating a show or doing interview or moderating a show is very interesting for me, because I think that's where I try to learn from different kind of people how they curate a show or how they talk to people. So I think the first book that I got is Ai Weiwei one. It's very interesting that the whole book is actually done in the interview session, where as if you are actually in the interview session with Ai Weiwei and Hans Obris. apart from that, I would like to shout out to my friend who did architecture and baca. They are actually on Discord, so the link is here. You can check it out. You can join it. It's totally free. Join in for reading session. Join in for different kind of topic. We actually talk about art. We talk about how about politics? Because actually think about it, architecture is everywhere. What if we can think about it from non-architecture perspective to see architecture? And Concrete Matter is actually like a bi-weekly discussion session. They're actually having now at 1 o'clock. Is it? Oh, sorry, 8 o'clock in Malaysia time. So they invited, different kind of speaker to present their works, and after that have discourse to talk about experience or even have questions. So feel free to check it out. Again, architecture is not really limited to art and science. Of course, you can talk about psychology, business, they are all art and science. But I think I try not to limiting ourselves in saying art and science because it's so broad. What if we narrow down architecture is about social, political, and economical influence? This actually extracted from Aldo Rossi's writing. And I think it's very interesting that architecture, somehow we must understand that the power of architecture is very huge. And what is our role as a designer or as a human being who designs something in this planet or on this planet or in a certain community? There is a certain duty or there is a certain obligation for us to focus on. It's very important to understand our role. That's why I think, in Alain de Botton's Architecture of Happiness, one of the authors saying that if you think philosopher is tough, but if you think about it, architecture is tougher because whatever we design are actually affecting things, So, and it brought up to my mind is that if you look into Maslow's needs, it's actually a pyramid. If you know the diagram. So at the base, it talks about basic needs, and go all the way up to the tip of the pyramid. It says about our self-esteem, our self-actualization. So if you look into this spectrum, right, I'm not saying any kind of architecture is bad or whatnot. This is actually very interesting to look at it, what kind of architecture we can work on. Actually, if you look into different kind of architects, they are working on different kind of skill. For example, when you talk of Sigurdsson, you thought of the cardboard shelter or cardboard church, right? And then you think about Elemental, Alejandro Aravena, you're talking about Quantum Monroe, you're talking about the BV Doshi, about Arayan low-cost housing. And then you talk about Oscar Niemeyer, or Malaysia Parliament House, Parliament, the Parliament Negara. And then you talk about Dealers of Video, the High Line, But if you're looking from the black until white, what I'm trying to justify is that there is no absolute value in architecture. You can go anywhere. You can wanted to go for humanitarian architecture, go ahead. You can even go until like you wanted to be Foster, you wanted to be OMA, you want to be, KPF. The interesting point is that they focus on different kind of project. And interesting enough, you can actually see the difference because in speaking of cost, or in speaking of the value of identity, in speaking of the scale, the materials, it's very interesting. You look at it, is why glass mostly are using at the 0 to 2, that scale bar. It doesn't use behind. Because I think humanitarian architecture, usually they are focusing on disaster architecture. Their main goal is to provide a basic need, provide a shelter for someone, right? So their priority is actually different. So there is no right or wrong. It's just that the priority is, allocate on different kind of thing. And I really like this quote by Aldo van Eyck saying that the house is a small city and the city is a big house. And this reminds me of power of architecture in a way, from a doorknob to an interior to a building into urban design, or a city, and then a city into a nation, and then we expand out to the whole world. Actually, the small little details is actually very important for us to think about. I'm not saying that you have to, feel so burdened, feel so burdened about little things. I think it's worth for us to think about the role of architects and also role of designer when we design something. And if you look at the first row of diagram, it's actually a cell. A cell become a tissue become a organ. An organ become a system. It's actually quite similar to our body. And what I was trying to looking for in my thesis or in my whole process of doing my so-called architecture or my philosophy is that architecture or happiness. If you look at these two Chinese characters, it says 助乐, means architecture and happiness. You will find the interesting part is that at the below, it's actually the red color one, it's actually mu. Mu means timber in Chinese, right? And interesting enough, timber back then, it was perceived as a foundation. It's a fundamental element that build up architecture or build up happiness. It's very interesting that why Chinese character actually means something, and the pictogram of this whole language or formation of a certain word. And beauty is the promise of happiness. I think the whole world, whatever we are doing, we are actually wanted to get our certain happiness, and when we wanted to design something like Corbusier talking about speed, talking about brutalism, talking about concrete, it's actually there is a certain value of happiness constitute in his way of manifesto or his way of designing architecture. Or you wanted to talk about someone like Michelangelo or Palladio, their happiness defined in different kind of way. So you can say in Malaysia, different. Let's say WHBC, okay, and then they might define happiness in different ways. ZLG Design, or BEP, or We Architects, or a different kind of Jimmy Lim, they have different kind of happiness. So this is very important that we think about it. Actually, the whole basic idea is we wanted to reach this happiness. We wanted to make our client to happy with the design. We wanted to make ourselves happy with the design. We don't want to design something that when you are not happy with, and then how can you expect the building to be happy for the user? And I think, the idea is that when we are designing something, we always tend to looking at the questioning. We tend to question that, should we do this? Should we not do this? And then we have to think like, can we think like Cedric Price? Can we think like Corbusier, that kind of utopian idea? But at the same time, we have to think about it. Is it possible to realize it? So, see, this is actually like a pendulum. You have to keep on switching in at left and right. It's like Louis Kahn was saying, immeasurable and immeasurable. You can't saying that I wanted to design something like this, a concept, but it's a blank concept, but you can't make it work. Then it will just remain as a blank concept. So I think there is a tricky part about architecture is it is art and science again. Science are trying to prove something, but art is trying to not prove something. It's trying to say I don't know, but science is says I know. 1 + 1 = 2. But inside it's an artist, right? 1 + 1 = 3. They can make it work as well. You look at Dali, look at Picasso. Their work is trying to against the realization, but they manifest it in painting, right? But the creativity is extremely free. They just free flow, like Corbusier talking about plasticity. So this is very, it's very intriguing for us to think about. Should we, when we come out with an idea or concept, for example, I wanted to design a house. What kind of house you wanted to design? So you think about why, okay? Why you want to design house? Is it how do you see a role of a house? And then you think about how. Is it concrete? Is it glass? Is it paper? Is it bamboo? So there is always this kind of pendulum working in our mind. But of course, when you have a lot of questions, you will have a lot of answers. But then you're not sure how can you know that which one is the right answer. In Elemental, this book is called a design manual of participatory housing. So they limit, they try to achieve a low-cost housing with, let's say, USD 7,500. They wanted to build a house, but they don't want to limit the residents to, to stop expanding. So they have to establish a framework so that it doesn't limit the occupants from expanding. So, but within that framework, within that specific budget, they can only choose maybe, bathtub and water heater. What can they choose? How can they choose? So, of course, they can choose, most of them, they might go for bathtub. Why? Because bathtub is much more necessary or much more fundamental, much more urgent than a water heater, right? So by raising up this kind of question, we can actually reduce a lot of questions, reduce a lot of answers. Then we can know, okay, this is the right answer. But of course, this answer, and when you apply to different kind of people, they might have different kind of answer. Here you see decision makers or politicians or professional, they normally will answer water heater because they already have bathtub, right? And this is very beautiful for me is that because architecture, you must understand is extremely sensitive to time and place. By means of that, you can't limit a people to stay within an architect's work forever. They will expand, they will grow. Or you know what, like B.V. Doshi was saying about main and sub. So actually, you think about it, whatever architects design is actually maybe just 50% or 80%. Another 20% we will leave it to the occupants to expand. That's what I see the organic part. In India, you can see the urban design is much more different compared to modern design like Glasgow. They have this kind of grid form. So when you proceed confined into a grid form, they don't have the expansion. But if you look at Italian old Renaissance urban design, like the Nolli map, right, it's extremely informal or irregular. Why? Because back then they don't have a like a proper plan. They don't have like a Google Earth to see it. So they just build and follow on their preference or things. So that's where the beauty is. I think sometimes we tend to think that I want you to live in a box and forever live in the box. I think no, because after this generation live, and then after that the children will continue live maybe, and then they will extend the house, they will modify the house. We must give a space for people to grow. So this is Arayan low-cost housing by B.V. Doshi. I think this, what I'm trying to convey is, if you look at the fashion, you look at how the Indian kids, what they wear, it's actually accommodate with the climate, or fit with the available material, the local material, and about the colors. How about the stairs? How about the kids? How they play? How they use the space? I think it's very interesting that eventually you will see, they start off maybe it's just a block, and eventually it will grow. It will expand. It is actually a living organism. Like Singapore architects did mention Tay King Soon. He said human settlements are organism, not mechanism. It's very true, because mechanism I tend to think like a gear. You turn on the switch, it will run this way. That's all. It doesn't create anything more. That's all. But you need maintenance. But the thing is, like human settlements, they are different. From this generation, they might put the sofa here, and then after a few years, they will move the sofa. They will move the TV. They might change. They will upgrade. Right. That's where the organic lifestyle is. And what another interesting is that when we're talking about organic of the user, we have to talk about organic of our design development. For example, you look at Zaha's painting as a paper architecture. You're talking about Leonardo da Vinci, his sketch of a horse lake, and eventually transform into a statue, or Zaha transform into Vitra fire station, or Bernard Rudowski a painting or a drawing into a patio house. And or B.V. Doshi did this painting, right, in a very very interesting colors or form, eventually transform into architecture. So I think there is a way that we can transform from painting something 2D, something 2-dimension, something raw from our mind into architecture. That's where I think is the beauty of the translation or interpretation of it. I think back then when I was studying undergrad, I was struggling to do this because I don't get it. How can I transform? How can I translate it? So I think it's good to have. That's why we have sketches. We draw a lot to brainstorm, to trigger our mind. And again, back to the idea that architecture is also related to social, economic, and political. So I would like to suggest, Medici is actually a TV, I think it's a TV series available on Netflix. You can watch it. So Medici is actually a family, it's a rich family, and also they are politician, okay? So they are rich and politician family in Florence. So if actually you talk about the dome, about the church, right? It's actually commissioned by them. Back then they are like, they are like politicians. They have the power to commission architects. So they commissioned Filippo Brunelleschi to design the dome. But at that point of time, architecture is not, architects is not architects. There is no one, there is no part 3, there's no such thing. You have to go Lemberger and then you get part 3. But the beauty is that no one is actually architects, but the thing is the designer somehow get that kind of position to design something so incredible. You know, they at that time, I think at that point of time doesn't have that actual architecture school. They have this kind of workshop or apprenticeship, you know. So I think it's very interesting to watch this TV series. They are talking about different kind of people, talking about Sandro Botticelli. You know, Sandro Botticelli draw this the birth of Venus. And talking about Donatello. Donatello is actually a sculptor in Italy, also from Florence, I think. And another movie is a girl with pearl earrings. Okay, so I believe that you can notice the painting by Vermeer, and also they actually, you know, make it into a film back few years back. You know, you can recognize the actress who is actually a Black Widow in Avengers, if you can notice. And Vermeer also, you know, paint, or Rembrandt, you know, they paint this kind of regents, the guy who in the black suit. They're actually a politician in Amsterdam or in Netherlands. You know, they are Dutch officials. So it's very interesting. You see those paintings and also how the art scenery at that point of time, or also architecture. Architecture is everywhere. Again, this is very tricky part where, you know, if we amplify power architecture so hard, we must also very careful with whatever we design. And Sepet again, you know, by 𝐆𝐚𝐫𝐲 𝐘𝐞𝐨𝐰, it's very interesting to look at it. It's not just talking about a specific iconic architecture, but we can look at it at the everyday life, talking about something that we look at from our personal eye level. We don't have to see like from egoistic point of view, you know. If you look at it from there, it will become like a white elephant. So I think it's much more relevant to, if you look at Chandigarh complex by Corbusier. I think it's a great building, it's a great architecture, but the thing is, I think somehow it's lacking. That's why it's become like a white elephant. You know, if people don't use it quite frequent, it becomes like a failed project. But I still, overall, I still like the architecture piece he designed. So here are some of the book I think I can recommend you guys to have a look. You know, throughout from before that, before I came to Glasgow, I already adapt some of the writings or readings. I think readings are very important because as if you attend to someone's lecture, you know. I think you know, feel free to browse through these books. I think it's very interesting to create this kind of different kind of mind. So I'm going to talk about PROJECTXYZ. So this is actually the first competition I ever joined with Amos, Sue, and Lee. So the competition is actually for MTC timber competition. So we're trying to come up with an idea that is it possible to design something in relation to Malaysian timber. So the site is at Sekinchan at Pantai Redang. So we thought, you know, it's very interesting to have an observation deck to observe different kind of livelihood, you know, in a everyday life basis. So we document it into different kind of diagrams or drawings that, you know, when the boat is cruising into the river, and they park at the port and then they unload it. So we thought that boat making in Sekinchan is very interesting. You look at the parametric design or the curve, the framework of it. And lucky enough, we have tutor architect Shahira who brought us around. She brought us to architect Asman, his place in Port Dickson. So we look at this curvature, the curve of timber house. And we are lucky enough, you know, architect Asman was friendly enough, you know, bring us to look at his workshop and also his house, and then bring us through inside his house. Very interesting that you can actually how different timber use apply into his house. So we come up with the idea that observation deck is like a sculpture instead of a architecture piece, you know. So it doesn't really have a concept that, you know, will this can this wall, you know, the load bearing or not, talking about can this support or not. I think that at that point of time we doesn't bear that kind of mindset, because it's an idea competition, so we just go all in for it. So in the end, you know, we go crazy. We doesn't have an idea saying, oh, this must be grid 1, grid 2, you know. I think it's a very beautiful project designed by Amos and Lee or Sue. It's very spontaneous, but yet very touched closely to our heart. And then after that, we have a chance to build MES Pavilion. It's actually at my alma mater in Banting. So it started off as a community service, but at that point in time, a lot of students are thinking, different kind of approach to pet housing, about how to help with homeless. But we come up with the idea how to help the students to expose into design. So this is the site, actually, this is actually my school. So I used to study in here, biology lab. So here is actually an open place. I still remember, I used to have this moment of daydreaming, and then I'll look up this empty land, right? And never thought that after that I can actually do something on this ground. So I come up with an idea saying that I spoken to my my teacher, Miss Liu. I was actually back then quite afraid to face Miss Liu. Miss Liu got that angry face. But actually she is very friendly. So I brought up this idea saying, Miss Liu, I wanted to do something. I said I'm from architecture school and I wanted to try something. He said, oh, okay, that's interesting. So we went through a few brainstorming session. In fact, actually, in the initial stage, she was thinking actually just a bench, don't have to be a pavilion. But after that, we go wild, saying that okay, you can actually go wild for pavilion like modules, and most importantly, modules is actually very easy for us to allow for grow, allow for expand, because that we just use about like 25 square meters, very small. So that at that point of time, we were thinking, okay, why don't we can grow more and more. So after that, we come out. This is the second program that like a pendulum idea. You wanted to do something like idealist, but at the same time, you have to switch your mind into realist. How about budget? How about logistic? How about the safety? How about the material? How about the colors? So after that, we probably improvise our design, and then we spoken to Miss Liu saying that I don't want to just we build on ourselves, design on ourselves. It's shock sendiri, So we say that why don't you bring this design and show the students, can actually invite them. So we actually work with the students and we actually had workshop. So had workshop and then understand to teach the student what is ergonomics, what is ergonomics, talking about body, height, language, or scale, proportion. So we actually deliver the lecture. What is architecture about? What is the form? What is function? So we come to a point where after the workshop, we actually collected a few design ideas. They are very interesting, very creative. But the thing is, you always have to only can choose one of the few. So we thought that about designing a bench, designing a pavilion with planter boxes, with about this kind of study pots. So this is the final design we have. After that, of course, over time we have to design according to the budget as well. So started off, we just thinking the most simplest form of material we can use is square hollow section. SHS is about 1 inch by 1 inch. It's very easy for us to use, and I think it's very easy because we just get it welded. So structurally, I think it's very durable. It's stable as well. And plus, because of those meshes, it allows for aerodynamic kind of performance. It doesn't create a lot of obstruction. So it doesn't mean that if you, because at that site the wind can get quite strong at a certain point. So I think it's very useful at a certain advantage for the wind to blow through. And we get our friend to apply some paint. So here we apply 2 coats of anti-rust paint, and then after that we have finish paint. We are lucky enough to invite one of the PIBG. It's like a committee in school. So this Mr. Tiru is actually a structural engineer. So we collaborate with him and then advise, how can we actually make sure the structure is stable enough. He is kind enough to tell us, you can actually anchor the building or the pavilion and weld it together. So this is on site. We actually have these bricks, right? These bricks actually setting out a good benchmark or like a foreground, like a base for us to sit. The same structure can sit on top, instead of, because the existing ground is quite uneven. So this is serving a good purpose for us. Here we have a cast on situ pad footing. We pour in concrete and then it's serving as a anchor plot for the the steel plate. You can actually see the steel plate is here, the steel plate. So it will welded with the steel structure, and then after that we will anchor bolt to the pad footing. so it anchors the ground. I think it works pretty well. The pad footing is about one feet deep, so I think it's okay for the just a small project. And we have to work, catch up with the deadline. So at the end, close to nighttime, we have to still catch up with our schedule. You see on top here, we have like welded all those pins. So after that, we can, you can see the brise soleil is installed on top of it. So create this kind of shadow play. And after that, of course, we have to paint it back. We envision that this project can last for at least 5 years, as long as you just keep up the paintings. Don't let the water corrupt the steel members. I think should be fine. So we work with the teachers as well to hang out all the plants, flowers or herbs. So actually we put up some names and allow the students to see, oh, this is actually what kind of plants. And the plants I actually get from my senior, her family operate a botanic garden. So we actually learn from them what kind of plants actually can use for mosquitoes, one for prevention of mosquitoes. So we advise them, actually they say that, oh, you can use lalang, is it lalang? Or use a certain plant, a lemongrass. They actually get different kind of advice from this kind of landscaper. So this is a finished work. I think it's a very ordinary work, but I'm quite proud of it because from design until construction, we've been hands-on all the way. I think the whole joy of this designing and participate of this whole process is that we are not saying that, oh, design is designed by designer and then do by our contractor. It's different kind of scope, but in the whole process we actually enjoy the whole process. So this is the brise soleil at the 1 or 2 o'clock. Actually it serves a certain purpose to create shade below. So you can actually see the rubber hose. Yeah. So actually we create this funnel where we collect rainwater, and then you can have a tap. Once you turn on, and then the water will flow through the hose. The water will come up from all those little holes that we punch on the rubber hose. So to our surprise, actually the hammock actually works quite well. It can sustain for 2-person weight. And after probably 2 years later, we got a chance to work for a Pavilion Now. Pavilion Now is actually an annual event organized by Shalini Gallery at PJ. So Amos himself been joining for 2 or 3 times before this one. So eventually we got a chance to design our own one. So we thought that to design at the parking space that just a wall, we wanted to design like a spiral thing, But after that, we actually advised, the client, Datin Shalini, saying that, why not you just design a wall, because sometimes they might need to make some U-turn at the parking space. So try to minimize the footprint. So we thought that instead of creating much more footprint, we're just creating much more a linear one. So we are lucky enough because this gallery is actually designed by Dr. Ken Yang. So we try to come up with a certain idea that match well with the color. But being a typical brick wall, why not we try something that different instead of just a linear wall, a straight wall. So we come up with a parametric design. Amos, he's quite adventurous and experimental on this to try with Grasshopper on how to play with bricks. So as first of all, we don't want to just come up with a new idea. We have to incorporate with the existing artwork. It's been there already, So we scrap it off the painting. We furnish it again. So we added some galvanized steel posts for our extra support for our brick wall. So those cement bricks are actually from the previous exhibition. We did it in 𝐔𝐬 𝐘𝐞𝐨 along with all the students. So might as well just use it, right? Because we have the available resources. So we come up with different kind of ways to mix the concrete or stack it up. Actually, we have drawings, but eventually we think about it, just follow our heart to to lay it. I think it's a very interesting way to somehow, when you're at the construction site, you will know that, okay, actually you can follow your heart to lay the brick. It's not limited to only guys. We are happy to have some female designer or female architects designer or students to work with us. This is trying to say that, you know, it's not meaning to say construction is limited for guys, you know. And for the finishing, it looks very rustic, very robust in a way, because it looks gonna be like unfinished in a way. But I think quite happy with that. Eventually, the plants are actually going. I think I'm quite happy to see it, you know, after a few years. I hope that the wall is gonna be like a green wall kind of thing, because I think those perforated quality allows the greens to grow in a certain way. Even though I would say the brickwork is just gonna be like a framework. It's just gonna be like a post for them to grow. So this is the bench, and I thought that, you know, why don't we just play with bricks in a different kind of ways instead of just whole chunk of it, to create this kind of rhythm on the surface of the brick on the bench. So for the competition, this is the recent one. I'm still working on it along with Amy and Sean. So this is a competition that we are working for, a competition called Superscape. It's organized in Germany. So we are lucky enough to, you know, we won the first phase, and then we are now working on the second phase. So the brief is calling for a balance for urban production and also living and also working. So we thought that, okay, we can start from Glasgow. So initially, you know, we started with sketches. We thought that because of COVID, right? And then we can do it in such a manner that what if we don't have to travel far? You see, I was working in KL before, and I was staying at Puchong. You have to travel for 1 hour because of jam, you know. So because of COVID, it actually teaches us that you can actually no longer need to travel this far, maybe. In architecture, perhaps we can live in that flexible manner where we can work from home. So this brought up to my idea that what if we can actually think of that kind of city model that is actually very helpful for environmental issue or sustainability in that sense. And this is actually a good book by Kuhas, AOMO. So Kuhas did this exhibition in Guggenheim Museum, and he published this book talking about potential of countryside. So actually, if you think about it, you look at Tekkingstone, actually he mentioned about urbanization. It's about bringing this kind of development into rural area instead of we keep thinking about London, you know, talking about Tokyo, talking about KL. Why don't we look into other places like Klang, you know? Klang is actually a city, but I think the development is very slow. I'm not sure why. It's because, you know, and why don't we look into Banting? We look into Jenjarum or Mantin, you know, or Seremban, or different kind of places where it's less developed. So we come up with the idea that central will remain as a central, but we don't have to keep on concentrating it. We can have different kind of district, you know, different kind of district, they do have different kind of potential. Again, different kind of context, they provide different kind of opportunity. For example, we look at Ipoh, okay? Ipoh itself perhaps is a center, but if you look into, let's say 5 kilometers or 2 kilometers away, they do have craft, they do have, you know, elderlies or different kind of livelihood. So I think we can actually look into that instead of we keep thinking about how to prioritize the status of a certain city, you know. I think at some point, city itself is a very vague definition, because it is actually a mentality. We think that city is good, city is the best, you know. But we tend to forget that when population growing, you know, when population is growing, the city is going to be denser and denser. Why not we think about other neighborhood district? So we visualize that this is a George Square in Glasgow. We think that, okay, why not we turn road into a river like Amsterdam, you know? So city himself, we can retain its status of that kind of prestigious quality of being a social hub or cultural hub, but we turn it into a human people first, not profit first kind of idea. Next, we're going to talk about my works in Strathclyde. It's a first year in master. So it is actually a four projects in a whole master plan. So my site is actually located at Goulburn. So Goulburn, you can actually see a lot of significant landmark. You can have Zaha's Riverside Museum, BDP, they designed this science center, Foster did this Armadillo and Hydro Central SEC Hydro, and also David Chipperfield designed this BBC. So, but the ironic is that so many star architects design here, but don't see a value of people because they are told so high level in a way. The people don't live there, don't engage well. There is no certain quality of social engagement. And funny is that when they are trying to invite or this kind of star architects, right, they tend to think Bilbao effect. Bilbao effect is like when you design a star architect's works, people will tend to think, oh, to boost tourism. But if you look into Glasgow effect, it says we die young here, you just get on with it. It's very sad that we tend to see the role or the iconic certain status, the star. We thought to think about star, but we forgot how about we see the people under the stars, you know. So here's the site, and here's the whole master plan that I thought to work on. It's not really a big master plan, but to come up with 4 different kind of projects to activate. So you have Uni of Glasgow. It's a very historic and prestigious university compound here. Going down here is city center. You have the Scottish Events campus. You know, it's a very strategic place where you have river. It's quite similar to Masjid Jamek, you know, in KL, but it's way bigger in scale. So I thought to cultivate or activate this river, you know, can be very fun. So this is the 4 projects: House of Grain, House of Coffee, House of Eternity, and House of Helios. So this is Riverside Museum. Here's the river. This is 4 projects, and the brief given to us is gonna have 4 kind of scale: S, M, L, XL. Today I'm just gonna talk about S and SL. So you can see different kind of landmark and also the neighborhood, the residential, commercial are happening, or industrial area. Bear in mind, Glasgow back then is famous for shipbuilding. You know, a lot of pre-war, shipbuilding, or very famous for this kind of technique, different kind of craftsmanship for shipbuilding. And I think that certain quality of industrial building is very important for us to resonate with that. It's actually a context. It is actually a identity of Glasgow. So the first project, House of Coffee, it is a very simple project that I was thinking, what if a project that can be allocated around Glasgow, it is like a pop-up studio, pop-up structure, you know. In order to do that, I was thinking to express the kind of transparency like Richard Rogers, you know. So I did this sketch and saying that I wanted to bring this kind of machine idea, but you don't want to machinize machine too much. At the same time, I wanted to see how can machine and human live together. But actually, if you think about it, machine is actually human, because without human intelligence, there will be no machine. But at the same time, I don't want the machine to overpower human intelligence. So come up with an idea that I don't want to be full AI kind of thing. So there should be a human and machine living together and deliver a certain quality of barista training center, okay? Because I was thinking that you can create jobs, you can create opportunities for different kind of people to learn coffee. Glasgow actually have this kind of coffee festival for different kind of people to learn about coffee making and how to learn brewing, how to learn identify coffee beans. So this is my inspiration. I thought, designed by Richard Rogers about this PAT center at America. And also this Foster designed this Renault Center. It's very interesting. You see how transparent or how tectonic been expressed here. It's very transparent where you can see this is member, this is cable, this is beam, this is extension, this is type bar. So I come up with an idea. I actually CAD'd it out first. There is a certain things that I can't really full on hand draw. So CAD allows me to have a background. So I thought that it can be actually the whole idea. If you look at the roof structure is try to make the roof structure to go up instead of asserting the pressure on the ground level with heavy column, heavy foundation. Everything go up, and then we can have a squeeze space in the interior space. So this is the final project that I thought you could actually have a certain understanding of beauty of geometry. You can see like even though the tie bar exerting the kind of support, but it's expressing the kind of triangular dimension or a certain clarity of structural members. Then I think I quite enjoy with that. House of Grain is actually the biggest project. We thought that our brief is to design a greenhouse. By means of greenhouse, I thought that you don't want to just design a greenhouse like a urban farming thing. What I thought is gonna be industrialized greenhouse. It's gonna be like a mega greenhouse where you produce a lot of grains. House of Grains, they have 7 kind of grains. They have wheat, they have barley. You know, in Scotland, it's very important. It's very prominent for the role of barley because they make it into, they distill it into whiskey. You know, or even beer. So I thought it's a very interesting way to talk about grains. And my site is actually at this Goulburn graving dock. So back then it was a graving dock where, you know, the ship will park here. It's very interesting to see those steps. It's actually like where the people actually, you know, those steps are actually serving a good platform for them to repair the ship or manufacture ship. But, you know, things change. Graving dock no longer serving its purpose as an industrial purpose or meaning. So I thought it is actually a grade A heritage site. So I thought the idea is that you try not to create too much footprint in this historic land. So what draws me into idea is this Cedric Price Palm Palace. Is about a lot of things are moving to the top. It's like floating pavilions, you know. So you can remain the ground floor plain and free. So I thought this is actually another way that how about you create some anchor ground to lift up, suspend everything on top. And those graving dock, you can see at the sunken area, it can be pavilions or it can be like a debate forum. It can be like a chamber. It can be a production lab. It can be a cafe or, you know, a restaurant area or social space. So some of the sketches I think is very interesting. I think most of the time I think I enjoy those sketches more than the final product. I think because those sketches allow me to express a lot of possibilities. So I think at that point of time I went to the site, I came back, and then I think I wanted to have different kind of mindset. I think because this is actually a first project I did in Glasgow for my master. You know, after I work in ZLG, I always have this kind of thought that rectilinear massing of glass box or things. I think it's pretty much, you know, inspired by Bohr Center. You know, you can see this kind of clean box, or you can actually see in Foster project. It's all about Miss Wendero, this kind of clarity. You know, so I thought bring this kind of idea to test it out, and I was never exposed to sketches before, and then I thought that okay, this is a good chance for me to test it out. So the final is that, you know, you have this kind of different kind of cores, like a pylon. It's actually with a lift inside, so you can actually go to these farms or different kind of capsule. So again, it's create this kind of messes. I can't really tell why if you ask me why this is in that direction or why this is at such direction, you know, I can't tell. It's really follow my instinct, and I think it's a beautiful mess in a certain way. I think in architecture we should retain a certain artistic way where we don't have to know why reason. You know, I think somehow institution, you should believe your instinct. You know, you just wanted to do it that way. So if I connecting a bridge there from Science Center to the master plan, you can actually see there is a connectivity to it. There is a certain understanding that you don't want just another white elephant project. So perhaps, you know, why don't join everything together as it's a beautiful pavilion. It's a beautiful project that, you know, if you see Pompidou Center designed by Renzo Piano and Richard Rogers, the plaza in front of that building is the slope where you can lying down, enjoy the building, sunbathing. You know, it's not about that building. Building is just a background. The whole idea is that about way of life, how we see architecture, how we celebrate it. Of course, I come up with the idea. You know, you can't just blankly saying something that not possible. So doing some diagram to show that how it's gonna be channeled water, to the plants, how to harvest it. How about silo? Wanted to harvest it, want to collect all the crops. How can we store it? Where can we store it? How about the underground channel? Where the services go? Here comes to the end of my lecture. Not about sharing session. I think in XYZ I always believe in three objectives. Is that both in a way you must always be confident with yourself, because if you don't confident with yourself, how can you convince your people, your tutor, your client, your friends to believe in your design? Experimental in a way, you should understand the audacity of zero. Again, like, try to be as innocent like a kid, try to answer why, why is like this? What if like this? If it's like this, then how can it be like this? If let's say this is square, why not rectangular? If this is a circle, why can't it be oval shape? There's a lot of answer. There's a lot of question we can actually bouncing in our head. Contextual in a way, there is no right or wrong. And a very good example is that I recently recorded a podcast with architect Ashi. Ashi is actually a lecturer in Taylor's. So he asked, I can't tell you chicken rice or chicken chop, which one is nicer, But at a certain point, you will know that, for example, chicken rice is 5 ringgit, okay? Chicken chop is 8 ringgit. But in your pocket, you only have 5 ringgit. So by saying that kind of 5 ringgit in your wallet is actually that kind of contextual. Saying that 5 ringgit you can only allow to eat this. Okay, so you only follow the option. For example, like a knife. Can you say a knife is a good thing or bad thing? But if you can use a knife to chop, to cut chop an apple or oranges, then you think it's a good thing. But if people use it to murder someone, to use it in a very abusive way, then you think knife is a bad thing. But object is often very neutral. But adding this kind of contextual meaning, then you know what architecture is about, how architecture can actually celebrate and serving purpose well. I think it's a very interesting thing that I don't want this sharing session is to be like from me to you. I think it's a very interesting. Why not you tell me that I do have this sort of interesting. I think it can be engaging way that. How was your day? In Malaysia it's 8 p.m. now, right? How was your day? Are you happy? How would you like to introduce yourself? How would you like people to know you as? Would you like people to know you as a writer? Or I'm just a mother's son. I'm the son of my father kind of thing. Or perhaps you don't want to identify yourself. It's okay. There is okay that you choose not to answer is also an answer. But if you can answer this kind of thing, it doesn't have to be answer, or you can answer, then okay, fine. But this, I think we as a student have to have this kind of curiosity in us. What about 1 minute have 65 seconds? Why clock is a clock? Why clock has no needles? What if has a needle? What if I'm blind? I can't deliver this sharing session. What if I'm a Japanese? I'm not Malaysian. What if I'm not in Glasgow? What if Macintosh is not from Glasgow? You see? What if Macintosh never visit Japan? And perhaps the kind of Art Nouveau sense might not be today what of his significance. What if Twin Tower is not designed by Caesar Pelli? So there's a lot of why that I think is somehow make us our life is so fun. And you think about it, okay, it's interesting. What if the whole world there's no gravity? There is gravity and there's no gravity. Think about it. There's actually a lot of ways to think about it. I think we're lacking of questioning. We tend to think that architects are giving answer. We try to be, I don't know, I think architects have a certain egoism. I think it's good sometimes. You have to have a right to make decisions. But I think sometimes you are too egoistic and say, I'm architect, you listen to me. I say brick, you follow brick. But what if the client don't like brick? Then how? So there is a contextual, there is actually the understanding of mutual understanding will allow this kind of filter of your option. You can have a lot of questions, but after that you use context to reduce those answers. And I think Malaysian students or anywhere, try to question more instead of we think 1 meter is 1 meter. You can't change it, So yeah, so that's all for my sharing session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gary, for the very interesting and rich sharing. Hope you guys all enjoyed it and gained a lot of information and knowledge. We will be having our Q&A session now. We got some questions for you from the audience. Okay, let me see.
But yeah, before that, I quite enjoy to see some familiar faces. Just thank you guys for coming.
Thank you. A question from Fang Jin. Can we please have this reading list slide for safekeeping? I think
yeah.
The book, is it the list of books?
Yeah, I can actually screenshot and send to Masa. Maybe you can post it out on Instagram or story. I'm not sure, but I can share to you guys. No worries.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Okay, I hope that answer your question. Next will be from Lokawi. What is the difference between Malaysia architecture education and overseas architecture syllabus? Since you did your part 1 in Malaysia and continued part 2 overseas, can you give some suggestions or advice on our Malaysia architecture system as a view of a student? Thank you.
Right. I think okay. I always think that doing your master degree in Malaysia is a good choice because I think it's a home country again. You can actually develop a good foundation. I'm not saying that. Of course, I know some people actually after they done their SPM and then they did their master or they done their degree in overseas like Manchester or Liverpool. You know. But I think the experience is that because for them, right, I what I heard from them is that because they already know that in the end they were gonna work in Malaysia. So for me, I think it's a very good for me is that because I develop a certain foundation in or network in Malaysia. So when I do my XYZ work, I do know some contractor or material supplier. So even though after I done my masters in Glasgow, after that when I go back, I still know, you know, what is the price of the hollow section? What is the cost of the concrete? You know, how much you want to mix? And perhaps, you know, with driving license, you can go anywhere. I think it's a very good thing. But of course, you can have different kind of choice and priority at a certain point of time. If you would like to compare the overseas, I think first of all we must establish a common ground is that you compare degree and master is kind of different. I think degree in overseas and then master in overseas is going to be different experience because they spend 4 years in overseas. But what can I say is that in masters, right? What I really like is that it's very flexible because in the 4 projects that I did in studio, there is actually no really a brief, you know. It just says that you design a greenhouse. It doesn't say that you wanted to do how many square feet or how big you want. What is the site, you know? There's no site. You just do, you know. You can do anywhere. And actually, another thing that I really like is that there is no constraint on drawings. In Malaysia, I think we stuck in the mindset where you have to do drawing of plan, section, elevation, exploded, you know. But actually, if you look into a house of grain, they actually didn't ask for anything. They just say that you have to express an idea. Okay, that's all. You can did it in exploded. You can did it in detail drawing, for example. You can did it in perspective. You can did it in floor plan. It doesn't really matter as long as it deletes something. That's what I really like because I think it's really smart way to understand what kind of how do you wanted to spend your time in doing something or production. You know, I often see the students struggle to do drawings until late night, until morning, cannot finish. Why? Because we've been told to prepare this, you know, there's a lot of constraint, there's a lot of requirement. I think, but the thing is when it comes to presentation time, you only spend 30 seconds or even none of it, you talk about your floor plan, you know. Perhaps your section talk more than your floor plan. Perhaps your elevation don't serve it at all purpose. I know there is a certain holistic approach for it, but you have to understand how well can we work. I think it's very unhealthy way that I've been working around the clock for certain things that I don't present, you know. That's why I like in overseas is that if you wanted to present your key master plan, key perspective, go for it. You can spend more time to talk about it. Perhaps you don't have to talk about master elevation or section. You see, that's what I like. Suggestion or Malaysia architecture system. Okay. So far, okay, I'm actually now working on podcast. I think before that, I actually spoken to 𝐔𝐤𝐬. I was talking about perhaps Masa can actually do more forum on the debate. I think somehow, again, I'm not blaming the nature or behavior of our Malaysians or Asian context. We are kind of shy. We are introvert in a certain point. It's not applied to everyone, but I think there is a certain overall majority is behaving in that way. I think we should challenge ourselves, you know. Why don't we do debate? I think this whole sharing session is good. Why don't we bring to another level that we compare, okay? For example, you know, we invite Taylor student and UCL student, you know, let's debate. It is a very healthy way to debate. It's not like saying ranking or whatnot. This is hypocrite. This is not good. But I think it should debate in a healthy way. What if architecture is like this? You know, have a forum, talk about it. That's one thing. Second thing is that I think should go more joint competition. Me and my friend actually we in this Discord like I showed earlier, and also Concrete Matter. I think it's very sad that I don't see much young people. I think a lot of young people should join in this kind of thing because there are a lot of experts and there are a lot of people actually done their master. They are in there. They talk about different kind of perspective. For example, few weeks ago they invited Epic. They invited a different kind of speaker from Thailand. You from that sharing session, you go in there, you can see how Thai people they design architecture, they design a certain program. You know, it's very important to expand your knowledge. After you expand your knowledge, then you can understand. Okay, I can apply this. I cannot apply this. It's fine. You know, I think we're lacking of that. We're lacking of the kind of exposure. We've been too quiet. It's reflect on our political system as well. I think we are not open. At the same time, we are not transparent. Again, join more, read more. I know you might not have familiar with words. I've been there, I know. But read more images. I think, let's say, Norman Foster did this book as a portfolio, it's a compilation of images. That's fine, you read those images. You don't have to go through the book by Dian Sajid talking about Norman Foster biography. It's fine. Just look through architecture works and you can see how they design, how they manifest in materials. Join more competition. I think it's been too quiet. I think quite active. It's all around the world. In Art Daily, you can look up in the art competition. Competition is a good way for you to expose yourself, market yourself. I have seen my friends in undergrads. I'm not saying I'm good, you know. I'm just saying that in my undergrads, a lot of good students, but they don't know how to market themselves. Perhaps they don't want, or it's okay. You know? But if you have to think about it, it's a very competitive market. You have to think about how to market yourself.
That's all right, Mr. Gary.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gary. I hope that answers Howie's question. I think it's very clear on the answer. A lot of elaborations. Also, the next will be a question from personally myself. Really inspiring sharing from you on how should we actually approach design and be bold in creating something. You showed your process, right? How you design from scratch, from how you actually like start from X, Y, Z. What's the meaning of X? What do you get from the unknown Y, and what do you get from the unknown Z? And the process is shown out. Just a little question. Is it possible if you could share or give some ideas on how did you manage your studio works and also at the same time on your project, the project XYZ? Because it's quite a lot of things to do. I could see that you do a lot of hands-on on your project. Yeah. So I just wanted to know how do you have any ideas on like to share with us?
I think first of all, just call me Gary now. We are almost the same age. But anyway, comes back to XYZ. XYZ again is a really part-time thing. We do have full-time. We are full-time student back then in degree time. I think it's very struggle also. You have to sacrifice a little bit in a way. First of all, you must understand that you have no regret on doing this kind of thing, right? You don't regret to do a lot of this kind of things saying, oh shit, I don't have enough of time to do my work. It's okay. You have to know your priority. I think a lot of competition I did was after I done my degree. I remember I was doing XYZ part-time. I joined a lot of competition or proposal. Because after study I don't have a assignment, of course, but I was working on graduate exhibition. Then after that I worked in ZLG. Of course, at that point of time I was so busy I don't have much time to do XYZ. So most of the works I would say XYZ in degree time. So at that point of time, I'm lucky that I found a good partner. We can work together, so you don't have to spend a lot of time to struggle about competition or proposal. How it works there, you have to find a right partner, or even yourself. You can actually find your strength that you don't have to spend a lot of time on working on something that you very exhausting with. For example, like we design a bus station for Think City competition. It only takes us 3 hours. We spend our first hour in brainstorming. Second hour, we produce our work. Third hour, we touching up. That's all, 3 hours. And our idea is not about try to win the competition. We hope we can. But it is about the culture. It is about cultivating or making us to familiar with competition. You know, I think once you step into the competition, like for example, you beat a project, right? You were familiar with the kind of culture where you will familiar yourself with the environment, how to read a brief, how to deliver to the competition organizing committee. That's the first thing I think you should establish, the kind of familiarity. How to get used yourself to join more competition or podcast, right? Podcast is actually the thing that I would like to try. That I'm not the kind of person who actually talk a lot, and then because of this, I talk a lot and train myself to do that. And speaking of time management, I think yeah, again, you have to find a right balance where if this thing can do, is it a good return? Because a lot of competition, they ask for money. For example, 10 pound or 30 pound euro. If you think you're confident, you go for it. Like for example, KIF, before that they organized this house project. I think it's worth trying, even though I think it's only 10 ringgit. I think it's worth trying because allows you to think that, hey, why not to take a chance. I actually joined for last year one is Orang Asli housing. It's free, I think, or 30 ringgit, I don't remember. But we are lucky that we won an honorable mention. So without trying, you can't know that you're worth, you know, because you can't say that I'm scared of lose, that's why I don't join. But if you don't join at all, you don't have a chance to lose at all, you see. So again, back to time management, you partner with different kind of people. So far all the collaborators, even though they are not from XYZ, but I'm glad that we actually know different kind of people. They are outside, you know, or our colleague back then in Taylor's. So I think that's how I think for the time management. I think you should. I think at one point I worked quite hard in a way. After I done my tutorial and then I went to meeting with my friend, and then we discussed about it. I think it's quite fun. I think sem break, right? Because I think before that, 𝐵𝐚𝐽 were talking about there will be 2 months sem break. Use the time preciously, you know, saying that you can do reading, you can do more competition, or perhaps you can do an idea. It doesn't mean there have to be competition. What if you can imagine what is a better KL? What if you can imagine a house, you know? Go ahead, just do. I think we're also lacking of that kind of just do it mindset. I mean, of course, just blindly do you know. Yeah, go be bold, you know, go and venture, go and try. I think at some point we tend to think assignment is too, it's a first thing. We tend to think assignment is king, you know, but if you think about it, we have life, you know. We have life. don't think about it, architecture is architecture. We have life, you know. You don't work so hard about things. You have life. Go and have some social life, you know, have some beer, or you know, have some communication, have some reading session, have some tea, go do some site visit, go to, you know, PJ Trade Center, go to Pavilion, you know, Bamboo Playhouse, see architecture, go experience architecture. Don't, you know, I think a lot of time we tend to see Pinterest, see Art Daily, see Design. They are sexy photo, they are sexy, you know, images, but it doesn't have the kind of 3-dimension experience. That's what I see. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Here's another question from 𝐷𝐵𝐚𝐿. Hi Gary, may I know how do you think about the programs and concepts for your building design? Thanks.
I think program, first of all, you must understand it. Program is very important. Program is like data. It's like a 0 1 0 0 0 1 something kind of thing, right? And the program eventually will affect the so-called apps, right? For example, even you're using WhatsApp, there is actually a lot of data inside there. So program, I always see is very important. I actually more keen to explore program instead of form making. Usually I spend my time on searching for a good program, good function, good data, good database for me to support my program, my form making. So that's where I find inspiration from reading, go to library, looking out for images, or go to site. I think site you can actually find a lot of inspiration. You will find that actually why the stone like this, why the grass growing this way, why the water is like this. Like graving dog, it has a certain depth. If you're looking for a photo, you don't know how deep it is. When you go there, you know it's about a 3-story depth deep, you know. So actually, you can see the dimension about how when you wanted to design a kind of building. So when it goes to concepts, I think concepts and program is quite similar. It's about how you wanted to derive the architecture. How would you like to derive the inkling in your mind? Is about in your mindset. I hope that answers question. But I think again should focus more on the program instead of form making. I think form making again is really about sexy building form making, you know. But like Zaha's building, right, Riverside Museum at Glasgow. I was so fascinated. I was so excited to visit that building when I was there. Wow, it's very interesting. That kind of parametric design. Wow, you're thinking, wow, Zaha must be crazy. How can she design as such form, you know? But everything when you go into there is a greenish building with ceiling, you know, but interior spaces, meh, it's like this, you know. But the exhibit item, okay, you know. But I think if you go to a typical building, even though it's a very similar building, for example, like Glasgow Cathedral, I think the event or the function has more interesting than Riverside Museum. Even though it's a church, it has event, it has Bible study, for example. It has museum. It has organ recital, you know, the music, they play music. It has group study. That is a very interesting point that those are the events. And of course, these events must be dictated by the organizing or by the user. That's why you see what's the difference between pavilion and Sunway Pyramid. You see why these both shopping mall, it's totally our architecture in a way nobody care about GDP designing the pavilion shopping center. It is about it is about shopping mall committee to fabricate the festival. You see how many thoughts they design the atrium. When it comes to Chinese New Year, right? Christmas market, how they fabricate the fake snow, even though it's fake. But I think what they're trying to curate is activity. This is very important. And Chandigarh is designed by Corbusier is failed, I think, because it's lacking of the activity. Nobody use it. So I think, again, even though you have world-class architects, but no use. So form is one thing, function is one thing, but I think function is the most sustainable one. For example, Pudu Jail, for example, Ampang Park, the shopping mall been made, demolished for make way for LRT, right? Why? People don't love it, I know there's no point to use it because people don't use it. People don't love it. If people love it, they will keep it no matter how. And then they will adaptively use it. So that's the point I would like to make. Like Aldo Rossi saying, facade is just one skin, okay? Inside is the real thing. We tend to think architecture is just a facade. Oh, it looks nice. It's Gothic architecture. It's Art Nouveau. It's just a skin. You see, after COVID, right, office, you see Foster Design Convention Center, it will no longer serving a convention center because no concert, but it will convert into a medical center. You see, that's where the function is. It will change. Believe it or not, your house, one day it will become a library. Who knows, right? Yeah, so I hope that that answered the question.
Yeah, I hope everyone also got Gary's amazing ideas. Another question from Prithika Gunalan. Hello, Gary. May I have the name of your podcast? And also, do you have any suggestions for more podcasts, shows, and movies, media that will help students to expand their view and knowledge? Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to see because podcasts. I must confess. I launched the first podcast in March. Sorry, the name is XYZ podcast. You can search on Spotify. Actually, look out into Instagram. I think the way I do it is Instagram. I have a lot of images of the works, and then it links to Spotify. I think you can get more insight from the student works, or like we architects. A few months or few weeks ago, I published this one. You can see the house he was talking about, and you can actually reflect on it. XYZ podcast and also Project XYZ on Instagram. Just a little bit shameless sharing. And before I did my podcast, actually, Pow Ideas did it first. They launched this event and they did it in conjunction of it, called Pow Down. You can check it out, Pow Down, POWWODOWN, Pow Down. And after that, in Malaysia, actually grow out a lot of things because of COVID, right? You can check out R Plus. R Plus is actually by GDP. R Plus session. R Plus. It's an orange color background. Another one is by 𝐘𝐫𝐲 𝐘𝐞𝐨𝐰, is it? 𝐘𝐫𝐲, yeah, 𝐘𝐞𝐨. You can check it out. It's also design. It's also about like interview as well. 𝐘𝐫𝐲. He's also a Malaysian architect, also lecturer in UCSI, I think. Brightside, my friend Eugene, he did this Brightside. It's not really about architecture, but it's very life oriented. It's about lifestyle. My friend did this way. It's very interesting. WEYH or something like that. But I'll share the link later. I can send to you guys. It's also about lifestyle. Also, architects train. These people also are architects. Yeah, I think so far I can only remember this, but I remember there are actually more people to do that. It's very interesting to see that. Podcast. Movie and show. Movie, just now I mentioned a few. Medici is available on Netflix. Sepet on YouTube, I think. I'm not sure it's been taken down or not. Before that, it's up for charity, for fun. Paint a Girl with Pearl Earring. It's a very nice movie. You can check it out. I think recently I was looking up to 2 Indian movies. Very interesting. You can actually see cultural, very, very obvious. One is Slumdog Millionaire. I'm not sure if you guys watch it. It's a one in the $1 million, the ABCD it's a Q&A section. I'm not sure. It's a multiple question, and then you answer it, then you get money and things like that. Another one is A Journey of a Fakir. A Journey of Fakir is quite interesting. He was a poor boy and then he wanted to be a IKEA designer. You can check it out. I think regardless, any movie, even you watch Conjuring, right? You can learn something also. Why? You can learn about cinematic. You can learn about narrative. You can learn about storytelling. You can learn about why they choose, why often horror movie are dark color. It's like, why dark, You can actually reflect on it. I think no matter how, you can learn something. Even though you watch Korean drama, you can read it, you can think about it. There's a lot of things to learn. I think you can learn anywhere,
Yeah. Thank you so much, Gary. Here's the last question from Kelvin Low. Hello, Gary. Thank you for the amazing sharing. Personally, I would like to know what kind of books that you will suggest the most for Architects Starter Pack.
Yeah, I think I still remember the first few weeks when I was in architecture school. My lecturer was saying you must study. Who is this guy? 𝐷𝐸𝐾𝐶, and then you study what else? The Newford school, that kind of thing. I think okay, for technical wise is good foundation, but for me, I rather encourage you guys to read any kind of books that can be totally unrelated to architecture. But in fact, sometimes we should look into non-architecture things because we've been caught up into this architecture box. and then we don't know how to think, we tend to running in a pool, we've been swimming in the pool for so long, but we didn't come out. I think it's a good book. I think Peter Zumthor is a good one. It's a very poetic way to look at architecture. His book is called Atmosphere and Thinking Architecture. It's very easy to read. Feel free to have a read. You can read this Norman Foster, Dian Saji. It's a green book. It's actually mentioned in the slide. Actually, can feel free to check it out. These are quite easy. I try not to take something very hard to read one. Again, you can actually read something images, visual is fine. I think some books are very hard to read, very philosophical. You might not get who is, in my early time, I don't know who is Tado Ando. I don't know who is Santiago Calatrava. I don't know who is Peter Eisenman. But it's fine. You read images, then you can see, oh, actually his way, his style is like this. As you go along, you can read more like towards a new architecture. Architecture of Happiness is a good one. I've been reading for 3-4 years because I don't understand. You can read Are We Human? It's actually a very philosophical one. Constructed Narrative by David A.J. Elemental by Alejandro Avena. But again, I still come back to the question. Peter Zumthor, Atmosphere and Thinking Architecture. Eye or Skin is okay. I think might be quite tough for the beginners. If back then, 3 or 4 years back, I think it's quite tough. But you can have a try. Norman Foster. I think again, read image is fine. You don't have to pressure yourself to try to understand the words. Read image, you flip through. Frank Lloyd Wright, Organic Architecture is like this. Foster, High Tech is what, Palladio, Renaissance, that kind of architecture is what. Tadao Ando is what. Why all concrete, And then you actually look into some. Actually, on YouTube, there is actually a show called A School of Life. Actually, it's a YouTube channel curated by Alain de Botton. Alain de Botton is the author of Architecture of Happiness. He curated YouTube show. He actually did this biographical channel. He talked about Corbusier is who, Oscar Niemeyer is who. Feel free to check it out. The School of Life. It's not mistaken. You type School of Life, Corbusier, and then it will come out a series, and then you watch. It will introduce following up people. Yeah, I think.
Thank you for the suggestions, Gary. Another, I think it's the last question. Yeah, the last question from Tan Jesslyn. Hello, Gary. Strathclyde is actually one of the universities I'm interested in going to for March. Would like to ask if there are any tips on passing or excelling the entry requirements benchmark, and if you have any tips on solidifying our knowledge in building construction with a lack of hands-on experience as students.
Speaking of Strathclyde, okay, I think I have to put it in an overview when you apply for UK master study. I think to excel that, I don't have really a secret because I just submit my portfolio and then I didn't get any interview, then I just got in. I'm not sure it's a good thing or bad thing. I think you can just go ahead and try, and I don't think I can give any tips. But I think the thing is that you must very precise on your portfolio. I think it's limited to 15 pages or 20 pages. Curate your portfolio well enough. Very selective. You don't want to include everything. You can look up into. I think before that, a few weeks ago, architect BU, she did this sharing session with architect Adranta. Talking about portfolio, you can check it out, the lecture. I think it's very helpful to see tips on portfolio. That's very good one. And also get your CV ready. And speaking of CV, it's good that if you can working experience or you can include award or involvement, I think, yeah, try to market yourself. I know in architecture, we try to saying that I don't want to market, it's business, it's money, I don't want. But if you think about it, business is everywhere. It is about trade. When I share knowledge with you, you share knowledge with me. It is a business. You don't monetize it, think it in that very commercial way. But you think about it, business is actually everywhere. Again, try to get yourself more experience. I think another way I would suggest work before enroll into master is very helpful, because because I think it's very helpful in a way is ready yourself to that kind of maturity to study master, because I think master, right, it really depends on your mentality or your knowledge, because most of the time the lecturer, they don't feed you like degree, you know, you're not like small kids anymore. So I think when you work, then you know it is not about whether you know how much technical things, 150 mm thick or brick wall with plaster posts, that's not a thing. It's about culture. It's about time management. It's about multitasking. It is about principle, time, punctuality. You know, talking about your time management, or how can you find hostel? How can you find a right school? How can you write email? How can you find person? How can you adapt into Glasgow? You know, it's a new environment. Life lesson. I think that's more important compared to technical one. Solidify or knowledge in building construction. I think that comes in working also. That's why I strongly suggest, if you have time, you know, start work before that. You know, I strongly suggest that, because I think too early to study master, I think you don't have the right time to enjoy at the full time, you know.
I see. Thank you, Gary. From a sharing from Fang Jin. I just thought of a quick sharing. Check out issuu.com and search for architecture portfolio. A lot of good example of portfolio works from around the world. Yeah, thank you, Fang Jin, for the sharing.
Yeah, I think issue is a very good one. I think also look up books. For example, I can't show now. But they are actually from different kind of books. You can see the way they put up their photograph, put up their writing. You know, it's very interesting. You can log on to Richard Rogers' firm called Roger Sturck and Harbour and Partner. You go down to their website. You go check out how Richard Rogers designed his CV. Just that enough already. I learned that from there because it's very simple. It talks about your name, where you're from, academic qualification, about your experience, you know. Of course, he is a very, very veteran, very professional one, but you can see the template. Very easy to understand. I think one of the flaw in CV, when you look up to Pinterest, they tend to see AutoCAD, your skill, 3/5. I mean, there's no point to talk about it, you know. I mean, for me, I just think no point to talk about it. You talk about it is basically bringing you down. You know? I know you wanted to be honest, but there's a certain point that I don't think is making sense, you know. It's wasting space. Why not you just use the diagram to put something useful? You can talk about your architecture philosophy, your personal statement. I think when you apply for master, it's very important to put a personal statement. What you are interested in. Are you interested in technology? Are you interested in Revit? Are you interested in humanity? Are you interested in conservation? You know, write it down. CV is a very good and try not to make it too lengthy, too wordy. People can't really digest so much, you know. When they receive like 100 at one time, they just want see them chow already, you know. They have no time to see your work. Okay, I think a podcast, make it portable, you know. That's I can only say I'm not an employer, but I can see a good CV. I think is working the best at that way.
So I think that's all for the Q&A session. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Is there anything you want to add on, Mr. Gary?
I think one more thing. If let's say you wanted to talk more, I'm more than welcome. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook, XYZ project or Gary. You can find me. I'm more than welcome to talk to people. I think because sometimes I'm quite fortunate. If let's say I have people can talk to, you know, if you feel helpless. I think back then in Taylor's, I was quite helpless, but I don't know who to talk to, you know. But I hope that I can help. You can actually text me. You can actually inbox me and ask anything. You know, I'm more than happy to help. I think another thing is Discord. Seriously, you know, go and join. Just even though sometimes we have funny thoughts talking about YouTube YouTuber and architecture, how can it work, you know? Or talk about, does it mean that you have to be architecture, you have to be architect after you study architecture? There's a lot of things you can talk to. So I think, you know, be proactive to join these sort of things.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gary. And also thank you everyone for joining us in tonight's online lecture. We hope you all enjoyed it. Do keep in touch with our MASA's Instagram and Facebook for the next online lecture. Until then, have a nice night and we'll catch you next time. Have a good evening and cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. See you.